BMW has been adding the M badge to its most serious performance cars for the last 40 years. To see just how far the performance game has moved on, we've brought together 4 of the most extreme M cars ever, from the M1 to the M6 and a couple of M3s in between. The first car to ever wear the fabled M badge was this, the BMW M1. Introduced in 1978, the same year as me, it was BMW's beautiful salvo to the Italian supercar elite. And it remains the only supercar BMW has ever built. The engine is placed in the middle and the Italians helped to design and build it. But the M1 isn't a hash of Italian-German influence. It bristles with delicate design details such as the twin BMW badges on the rear flanks, the pop-up headlights and the kidney grille. It's a proper bedroom wall kind of car. Only 453 M1s were ever made, and today pristine examples like the one I'm in cost in the region of 180 grand. M versions of the 5 and 6 series followed before the introduction in 1985 of what many regard as the finest M car ever, this one, the E30 M3. The flared wheel arches make the M3 look like a regular 3 series with a dose of the mumps. And it's left-hand drive only, which means you need a long neck if you wanted to overtake someone on a country road. But I don't care about its foibles because I've wanted to drive an E30 M3 since I was a wee lad. The interior is very low-key. We are in the 80s, don't forget. But all you really need in here are supportive seats and a lovely little 3-spoke steering wheel. I was expecting it to be a bit sharper, feel a bit more razor-edged than perhaps it is. But then, this car's 30 years old. I can't expect it to be like a modern hot hatch. It's certainly quick enough. You really have to rev it above 4,000. It starts to get going. But what I love about it is just how you can place it really accurately on the road. And there's no interference, there's no big thick pillars to obstruct your view. The steering doesn't feel as precise as perhaps I was led to believe reading car magazines from 30 years ago. Obviously edge will have to come into account, but it just lacks that kind of bit of feedback that you would get from a modern hot hatch. What I love about this E30 is just how small and compact it feels. If you look at the size of an M3 nowadays, you couldn't wind it through these tiny country lanes as well as this. In the intervening years, BMW has built M versions of nearly every car in its range. But it was in 2009 when it released its most bonkers car yet, the E92 M3 GTS. Inside there are bucket seats, a roll cage and a fire extinguisher. It's really just a track car with number plates. And I don't know what I've let myself in for. The GTS is the rarest and most expensive M car ever built. BMW only made 1,500 of them, and they cost 120 grand each. They're also available in any colour you want, so long as that colour is orange. Getting into the GTS after the E30 M3 is like getting into Bill and Ted's Time Machine. They really are a world apart. This feels like a racing car. It's got that instant throttle and steering response that you don't get on a road car. And it really is as frightening as it looks and sounds. I'll give you an example of the throttle response. We're in 3rd gear at 40 miles per hour, doing 3,500 RPM. I'm not going to put my foot flat to the floor. I love this GTS. You could take it to Le Mans, do laps all day long and then drive it home again, and it's actually quite comfortable despite all that scaffolding in the back. The M6 costs £94,000, which suddenly doesn't make the M3 GTS seem that outrageous. The M6 is also mechanically identical to the M5 Saloon, yet it costs 20 grand more. Why? But while there's a certain Q car allure to an M5, the M6 is about as subtle as a neon sign outside the village chippy. The M6 isn't exactly a lightweight sports car either. It weighs 1.8 tons. That's despite a carbon fibre roof and alloy doors. The engine, a 4.4 twin-turbo V8, is the defining characteristic of the M6. The old V10 needed plenty of revs to go, but not in the case of this new M6. Plant your foot to the floor in any gear, and you'll be up the road like a cat that's spotted an Alsatian. Use these flappy paddles behind the wheel to change gear, and the M6 turns into even more of an animal. So much so that you'll have to keep one eye on the speedo and one eye on the road. The M6 doesn't get upset by corners either, and thanks to the M-car suspension, it destroys everything in its path in much the same way as a kid let loose in Hamleys. It's amazing the difference whenever you climb out of the GTS and into the M6. The M6 has got a lot more power, but you wouldn't believe it. It doesn't feel like it's a more extreme car. It doesn't have a roll cage, it doesn't have a fire extinguisher, it has proper seat belts. It's even got 2 seats in the back there so you can take the kids out. Don't get me wrong, it's still an extremely quick car. It'll get you into a lot of trouble. One thing that is clear is that even after 40 years, BMW's DNA for what makes a great driver's car is still very much alive.